more enriched. I have divided this session into 3 parts. In the initial 5 minutes, I'm just going to talk about the difference that has come into this particular profession. We generally keep talking about that अब teaching में वो जान नहीं रही है, वो दिन नहीं रहे, जैसे हम अपने टीचर्स की इज्जत करते थे वैसे अभी हमारी लोग नहीं करते हैं. So what all are the changes that have emerged over a period of time? What all are the things that are to be kept in our mind while designing our sessions? कहाँ कहाँ पर क्या क्या changes आए हैं? Initial 5 minutes we'll spend on that so as to put the things into right perspective. Thereafter, half of my session is about verbal strategies to strengthen up our classroom communication. And the latter half of my session is around non-verbal communication. This is the irony that I can say that my major area of research and exploration is non-verbal communication. And I'm conducting this session in the absence of any non-verbal inputs from my learner's side. Perfectly all right. Instead of being bogged down by the hindrances, let's use it as an opportunity. We'll request you all to keep mentioning your points, your observations, your questions in the chat box. I'll try to wrap up pretty much in time, and towards the end of the session, would like to take up your questions or inputs or observations one by one. That is one of the way that I could come up with to compensate for the engagement and the classroom things that we are actually missing in this online platform, right? So let's begin with, I'll request you to use your chat box whenever it is needed. So please let me know, do you remember your favorite teacher? Some teachers who have brought a major change in your life, some teachers that are considered to be the memorable person in your life. If you remember them, can you mention their qualities? What all are the things because of which they are remembered by you? Can you write down some of the qualities because of which you remember those teachers? Thanks. I see abundance of yes. Please write 2-3 qualities. I'm looking forward to that. Okay. Okay, I'm reading it out. So Yadvinder Kaur, motivational. And then I see very strict but good at heart. Then I read motivational, simple way, especially mathematics, lovable, scolding freely, humble, lovable, explaining the things well, average student, my mentor motivated me, confident, humble, simplicity, good sense of humor. Right. If I may collate friendliness, lovable, simplicity, friendliness, thank you. Thanks for your responses. Yeah, good orator, knowledgeable, good delivery. If I can quickly, I have read all these points as well, and I'm sure you all are also reading them. You will agree that all these points are not about the content of the subject. Many of these points revolve around interpersonal skills. Many of these things go around how do they make you feel. It's not like, and in this particular time, when we are seeing that the information is abundant, it's available all across the board. Be it any topic on planet Earth, you can get a lot on Google. You can get a lot from the openwares, coursewares, MIT, MOOCs, Coursera, so many things are available. So what differentiates a good teacher from a bad one, or a memorable teacher from not so memorable one, is the major quality of his interpersonal skills. It's not what do you teach to your students, it's more important. It's not at the cost of, we cannot say that only shallow knowledge and better skills. No, it's like knowledge is important, but yes, in this particular time, and you are remembering your teachers when knowledge was not available that freely, right? And still, all those skills that are mentioned here are interpersonal skills. So the thing is, this is an era wherein open access to the things is available, information overload is there. The distinguishing factor that you and I have are our interpersonal skills. Right. So I'll quickly talk about the communication models and how do they set in the current circumstances, and what all are the lessons that they teach us. Right. If I may talk about the history of communication models, communication initially was learned and read as linear model. Linear model wherein the discussion goes between speaker and listener. One-sided it was considered to be. So if we may try to relate that to it, that was perhaps the Guru Shishya Parampara. Whatever Guru has said, that is final. Final verdict, no question, nothing from that particular side. And then we used to follow them blindly. Thereafter came an era of interactive models wherein people started opening their mouths, wherein people started asking questions, wherein people raised questions and it became interactive, wherein students gave feedback as and when they were asked, a little hesitant. But this is an era of transactional models. If I may quickly talk about the transactional models, this is an era wherein we keep changing our roles constantly. As is mentioned in some of the areas, it is mentioned there is no teacher who doesn't learn and there is no student who doesn't teach. So this is the era which is constantly changing the roles. This is the era wherein a lot of noise is there, wherein because of which your message is not taken the way it is intended to. This is an era wherein we are changing roles. There are many barriers and we are constantly bringing the meaning out of a particular context. Right. When both the sides are equally important, it's important to understand what all are the communication barriers that can create major issues in the class. If I may ponder over, the whole session can go into the barriers only. Since you all are learned people, I'm not going to go into the depth of each and everything, just going to talk about few common points that are to be kept in our mind to have a interactive and well learning experience. Barriers, I think, can be divided into psychological, social, semantic, numerous. Psychologically, these people are the people who have information overload. Thanks to internet, thanks to their mobile devices, thanks to lockdown, you can't even say not to carry their mobile phones. So this is an era of shorter attention spans. This is an era wherein people actually are not able to concentrate for a longer time period. So how to handle that? Right. So the age-old principle that is given by Aristotle is tell them what you are going to tell them. Then the second point is tell them. And the third is tell them what you have already told them. Meaning thereby, kahi to sunenge. If the attention span is shorter, if the people are not paying much attention throughout the time, it's better to keep the session shorter and to divide them also into smaller chunks and to give the transition of the ideas as well. It's better to use the transitions in different other ways. On transitions, I'm going to speak a bit more in a little while. Right. There is another concept which is known as curse of knowledge. Curse of knowledge should be understood by especially the teachers. The concept tells us that in case you and I have learned a thing at a particular stage and then we have repeated it so many times, that's the case with the teachers, it seems very easy to us. It seems so easy to us that we go at a faster pace. And when we go at a faster pace, people are not able to grab the thing. But unfortunately, when we see that they are not able to grasp the things, we get irritated that why aren't they able to follow despite our best possible efforts. The answer is we need to pitch it as per the level of our students. Curse of knowledge tells us that we need to understand that we have repeated it, we have learned it, we have explored it from so many angles that right now pitching it at their level is our responsibility. The pace and the ways are to be maintained by us. Another important thing that helps us in overcoming the barriers is the understanding of the prominent position of an argument. You keep listening to various speakers every now and then in this FDP as well. Otherwise as well, throughout your life, you have been listening to so many speakers, right? When you don't have any credential, when you do not know much about the people, how do you gauge whether you need to be attentive or not? Can you go in a standby mode? How do you decide it? When you don't have any credentials, what do you say about that? Again, A wrong question. Maybe I'll put it in a different way, because interaction is not there. That's why. Oh, you are always attentive, Ravindra sir. That's interesting. It's a pleasure to know, to teach such students who are always attentive. By the way, I am not always attentive. I gauge, and I think students do gauge. They pick and choose how many times are we supposed to listen to the other people. The thing is, the rule of positioning tells us the most prominent position in an argument is the very beginning. Right? If you do not know anything about me and I start a thing, you give me initial 2-3 minutes to listen to me and gauge whether the content is significantly needed. You want to listen to me or not. And the second most prominent position in a discussion, in an argument, is the fag end of an argument. So the point is that people generally remain very attentive in the very beginning. Yeah, thanks for the input, Mr. Mohan Singh. Yes, it depends upon the interest of the learner. Definitely, communication, since it is a two-party thing, it always depends upon the both the sides. But if I have decided to improve myself, I'll owe more. If, yeah. Yeah. Any input? Okay. The thing is, if I have decided to actually go ahead in a direction wherein I'm trying to improve myself more, so I owe a little more. I need to invest a little more time and energy. So in that particular context, I say that the very beginning of your session it gets more attention from the people. Therefore, it should be used to give them the reason to listen to you in the remaining 40, 50 or 70 or 90 minutes. Because it's a genuine thing, they are more interested at that point of time. And the fag end is there. Suppose you are not very interested in listening to me and I say, to conclude, I want to say, you are again on the board. Last में और सुन लेते हैं क्या इनको कहना है. Right. So the basic thing is that attention is captured with the fag end as well, and some of the prominent transition words also. We need to use them carefully so as to understand and see the things in a better way, right? So if I may talk about the ways in which people have handled, people are using the retention skills. Just a minute. I think I have done something wrong. No. Okay. Yeah, so this is what I'm talking about. If I may talk about, I think this is on the screen of everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the attention span and the retention of the learning pyramid, which is considered to be controversial, but nonetheless presented by the people in almost all the directions. This tells us how do people have the retention power. If you are delivering only lecture, the retention power remains 5%. Through reading, it becomes 10%. Through audio visuals, it's 20. Through demonstration, 30. Discussion 50, practice doing 75, and if we teach others, it's through 90%. So we need to see that this is an era wherein we need to make the people active listeners instead of just considering them to be the passive viewers. Right. So this is the time wherein we need to understand how to change our roles and positions. This is the time wherein our role has been changed from a stage on the stage to the guide by your side. Right. This is something which I have shared earlier as well. And this is the title of one of the book chapters that we have written long back. Right. So the thing is, I'll talk about the general rules of interpersonal communication and how are they applicable in our routine classrooms. The very first thing is that communication is unavoidable. I mean, right now as well, your other party in the classroom is always communicating to you. If we are attentive enough, if we are interested enough, we can definitely get to know what all is being communicated by the people. I think later half of my session will give us an idea how to know the messages that have not been clearly uttered by the people. So when communication is unavoidable, we keep communicating unintentional messages, and our students also keep communicating regularly to us. The only thing is that, are we interested? Do we need all that? Do we pay attention to that? How to do that and how to handle it? I think the latter half of my session will talk about that. Second thing is that, sorry. Yeah, is there any input?
No, ma'am. Madam, your voice is not up, madam. Mute. Yeah, now you're on mute.
Okay. Is this okay now?
Yeah, it's okay now.
Okay, fine. So we are talking about that communication generally operates at two levels. These two levels can be innumerous, but the level that I'm going to talk right now is the level of content and relationship. Right. Howsoever howsoever technical is your subject, whatever you say, you always keep communicating a relationship related message simultaneously. For example, if I say I need assignment by tomorrow, or I say submit this assignment by tomorrow, or I say you all are to submit this assignment by tomorrow, content wise this message is exactly the same. But if you may say, if I may put it in a different way, relationship wise, this message, all the three messages are very different. So the thing is, our tone and the way we are putting it forth, that is important to be kept in our mind. Right. Next that we talk about is that communication is a process. Whatever has gone before and whatever is coming forth, it always has an impact. It's not in isolation. If my last class was not that effective, I need to put in extra effort for this particular class. If my early erstwhile colleague has not handled the previous material in the appropriate way, I need to handle that as well. It's a process. You cannot see it into an isolation. And the last thing is, communication is not a panacea. Ramban Aushadhi nahi hai. If you just say goody things, you say I'm a fair impartial teacher, but your actions don't go in sync with that, it's not going to serve any purpose at all. At the end of the day, your actions speak louder than words. Therefore you need to pay attention to your actions as well. Communication is not a panacea. I generally say communication is icing on the cake. So the cake has to be there. The content has to be there. Thereafter, how beautifully it is presented, thereafter, how well are we able to connect with the people is a secondary thing. Right. So far, so good. The next thing that we are going to talk about while planning the sessions, how communication can play a role when I am planning my session. Right. While planning my particular session, I can define my goal and objective in numerous ways. And I'm giving you two quick examples, and just for the sake of clarity, and just I'm taking a generic example wherein I say that in this session I'm going to talk about motivation theory, or I say I'm talking about defining the objective of a particular session. I'm talking about the significance of I, we, and you language in my own communication while designing the session or in the session. I'm talking about the word choice and how it brings a difference in this particular way. Right. So I'm giving you two quick examples. The two quick examples to see how that preparation can be little different or how focus can be different. If I say in this particular session, I'm going to talk about motivation theory. Or I say, after completing this session, I wish my students to be able to explain, or to be able to understand, or to be able to write down, or to be able to depict me practical examples of motivational theories in their surroundings. The simple difference in the phrases, that I'm using, I-oriented language or you-oriented language, it actually changes the whole focus in the whole delivery of my particular session. In the first sentence, in the first objective, when I say, I'm going to talk about motivation theory, I'm going to talk about whether you listen to it or not, it's your headache. Right. When I say after this particular session, I wish my students to be able to explain, to be able to write down, to be able to depict. So the degree of involvement is really very different. When I talk about they should be able to write down, maybe mugging up is the basic phenomena that I am encouraging. But when I say I wish them to show me the practical examples in the surroundings, maybe I want the concept to be ingrained in their head so that they are able to relate with the surroundings, so that they are able to relate with the application of those principles in the surroundings. So what is my focus? This helps in designing the curriculum. This helps in defining the objective. This helps in defining the things. The similar concept I'm talking about, how it changes the involvement as well. I hope this has already been discussed by the other colleagues as well, those who talk about emotional intelligence and those who talk about neuroscience. A particular set of words arouses a particular kind of emotion in the mind and the heart of the people, right? I'm talking about very basic. I say I-oriented language, you-oriented language, and we-oriented language. I'm giving you 3 quick examples. Let us see how does it make any difference to you when I say, okay, people, I'm going to teach you today. Or I say, welcome people, I'm going to discuss. Or I say, after attending this session, you will get to know. Do you find any difference in these 3 kind of presentations? Right. So I think the feel, the basic idea, the involvement, when I am going to teach you, I am on the pedestal, on a higher pedestal. Again, वो गुरु शिष्य वाली परंपरा. मैं ज्ञान बांट रही हूँ, आपको बटोरना चाहिए. But वक्त बदल गया है, कोई बटोरने को वैसे तैयार नहीं है. You need to relate with the people in an altogether different manner. So the crux of the matter, the basic principle, the basic communication principle that I'm going to talk about right now is the difference in the I-oriented language, we-oriented language, and you-oriented language. It's very prominent that I-oriented language is for depicting my power. I have decided not to give you good grades. You didn't perform that well. Right. So when I have decided not to give you good grades, I have the power and I show it. I'm assertive about this. I'm depicting you the power. But when I say you didn't perform it that well, the onus is on you. Right. I-oriented language is depicting more power from my side. You-oriented language is putting more onus on the other people. And we-oriented language is for the team spirit. As a leader, when I take my people along, when I say together we need to work on this, we need to see how can you improve. The empathy, the level of involvement, these things are higher. This is applicable across the board in all the segments. Right now, I have put it into the classroom section, in the classroom discussion side. Otherwise, it's important. Suppose I'm giving you off the context another example because I wish this to be remembered. Right. Suppose your boss says, why didn't you send the document that you were supposed to? The thing is, you have given the document to the boss only, and the document is lying on the boss's table for his comments and all. And therefore, you couldn't send it to the other officer whosoever needed it. Right. The thing is, point is clear. Actually, this is boss's mistake, and he only is asking you. Suppose this is a check. Suppose this is a check which was supposed to be some third-party vendor, somebody and all, right? And the person says, why didn't you send the check to the client? There are 2-3 ways in which I can answer this. One way to answer is because you haven't signed it. Simple truth I am telling. This is a very simple truth wherein I'm saying because you haven't signed it. But when I say the check has not been signed yet, you also know who hasn't signed it. I also know who hasn't signed it, but I'm not making it pinpointing. So the So the you-oriented language is when you put more onus on the other person, which is not appreciated in a negative message, but in a positive message when you are giving a little more importance to the other person becomes better. Right. We-oriented language is when we use as a team, when I want an involvement, when I want my people to be with me. And I-oriented language is wherein I want to depict my power. Right. Similarly, active is to show the power, and passive is when the doer is to, I mean, these are standard 8 things, right? I remember. But the thing is, we don't use them very much into practice. The thing is, we don't understand the power it has. Right. So, okay. I'm here in the inputs, I'm reading that of which option is good or I option is good. All the options are equally good depending upon the context. That is the problem of communication. We generally say, whatever I say, take it with a pinch of salt, because context decides. Sometimes you need to be authoritative, sometimes you need to be liberal. So if you choose your language as per the context, that will be better. That will be taken in a positive way. Shall we? So we are moving forward. Right. So in my audience analysis, I do a lot. I mean, we all do a lot. We know about their basics. We know their socio-economic backgrounds. We know from the background they are coming from, their expectations. Placement, of course, is the major deal. And so many things are there that we know. But one just important theory that I wish to point out here is Pygmalion effect. Right, because one of the common crib, one of the common thing that we generally say, we don't get quality students. We always compare ourselves with the others as well. Whatever quality students we are getting nowadays, whatever it is, whatever deterioration is there in the society, that is across the board. But the point to be remembered is, I'm talking about the power of Pygmalion effect. Pygmalion effect tells us, in the light of numerous experiments that have been conducted by psychologists in numerous context, and the basic concept was the classroom context only. So how can we take it away from teaching? It has been conducted like this, that a group of students have been taken. I'm cutting a long story short. A group of students have been taken, and they were told that, okay, you are going to be taught by selective teachers. They are wonderful teachers. They will give you special inputs. And to the teachers, it was told that this is a special group of people, special group of students who have a higher IQ, right? So interestingly, both the sides were randomly chosen. Both the sides were randomly chosen, but the input was given to the students that the faculty that has been chosen for you is a special faculty, high-fi faculty, very knowledgeable, very passionate, very compassionate. So that was the input given to students. And to this, similarly to the teachers, the input was given that the students are chosen one. They have higher IQ and they will be performing better. Interestingly, after the completion of the course, the inputs were varied. Their IQ levels were better. The level of satisfaction from the student side was better. The level of satisfaction from the faculty side was better. It is the basic concept comes from Shaw's drama, but the thing is, it has been taken and repetitively used in the psychology and the teaching psychology as well. The crux of the matter is, people rise or fall up to our expectations. If we expect our students to perform better, they are going to be at least a notch better. I don't say that you are going to complete the world, completely change the world. Issue that I would like to say, I would like to mention further. Other than this is definitely a good technique, definitely established one. This helps us in building connect. Other than this, we can also begin our session with a particular question. When you begin your session with a question, definitely readers, listeners are more involved when they are answering the things. But what kind of question should it be? Suppose right now I should ask a question, the economic stimulus given by Government of India is good or bad? If I throw this question in an economics class, I think the class will go for a toss. Half the class will say, yes, it's good. Half the class will say it's bad. If I really need their inputs on the economic stimulus, and I'm going to talk about that only in my particular class, the question that I should put forth is, what points in the economic stimulus are good according to you? What is the major strength of this economic stimulus, or what is the weak point therein? The point that I'm trying to put forth is that the question should not be such which divides the class into different parts, and then a major thing is going into the another direction, and a lot of time is lost into that tussle. Other than that, definitely we can begin with stories, we can definitely begin with quotations, we can definitely begin with startling statements. These all are the established ways to begin with the sessions in an appropriate way. So if I in an interesting way, there is no rule as such, but the thing is, these all are the established ways. I'm skipping this particular part as well because I need to put a little more emphasis on the other classroom points also. So if I may talk about the transition and how do we use them, the thing is, by transition, I'm taking my audience along with it. By transitions are used as signposts, transitions are used as the roadmaps. For example, let me start by explaining you this, then this point, and then I say, besides being reliable, this technique is also used in this particular thing. Then I explain that particular technique, and then I say, next point that I wish to mention is this. So these particular points that I'm using in between are taking my audience along. It's a good strategy. It's a very good idea to take the transition words, transition sentences. Why? Because the attention span are shorter. If people have missed part of it, if people have lost attention in between, they are not well connected, there is a high possibility they will connect with you at the next stage. That is another thing, right? So to conclude your session, not my session, right? So I'm talking about conclusion part. What all are the basic strategies that we suggested? It's suggested that give a quick summary, or we can also build a further connect that will help them in looking forward to the next session. Or a quick summary will also emphasize on the basic ideas that people have, that people can further use it, right? So if I may ask about the things that are very important that help us in building influence, how and why the people who are more influential, how do they build their influence? Basically, there are three factors. Basically, there are three things. That is an age-old theory, which is generally said it's a blend of ethos, pathos, and logos, right? Howsoever dry or howsoever technical your subject might be, if you want to be an influential person, a memorable professor, I think these things, your delivery and your sessions should also have a blend of these things. Proportion may change. By ethos, we mean the credibility. The credibility, definitely, the kind of image we all have reaches before we reach the class, right? The kind of image that we have definitely is built over a longer period of time. That is through our fairness, through the track record, the way I treat my student. These all are the long-term credibility makers. There is another thing, another trick as well, which is called as the short-term credibility builder. Interestingly, that might have been noticed or not, I'm not so sure about that. There is a law, there is a principle that is called the principle of similarity, of course, given by Robert B. Cialdini, who says that the principle of similarity says, if I may take the complete sentence, we are easily influenced by the people who are liked by us. I say, we are easily influenced by the people who are liked by us, right? And who are the people who are liked by us? Who are like us? Complete philosophy, the complete theory goes like, we are easily influenced by the people who are liked by us. And who are the people who are liked by us? That is, who are like us. Let me give you a quick example. Whenever you are at an international platform, the very first thing that you want to see is how many Indians are there. But in the national background, that is not very important. So the more we depict the other party, that we are one among them, we understand their pain, we are not alien to their world, the better positioned we are in sharing the experiences of the people, and they are also ready to listen to us. That is the credibility and the quick credibility builder. Of course, the credibility in a longer time period is built through the track record and through my behavior only. Again, actions speak louder than words. Second thing is pathos. That is the emotional part. How do I connect with my students in a emotional manner? What emotions do I have? How do I motivate them? Again, the language that I use, positivity or the negativity that I build. And the last, of course, is logic. Without logic, nothing can happen. That's an important part. Right. This is the verbal part broadly in a very cursorily manner. I have covered the verbal part. That since I am conducting a session and non-verbal should not be there, that cannot happen. I can't take that risk. So quickly, I'll talk about the non-verbal things that depict that play a major role in the classes. This is the last chunk of my session. I'm dividing this also into two parts. In the initial 5 minutes, I'm giving you an overview of the various branches of nonverbal communication. Thereafter, quickly, we'll talk about the common cues that we see in our classes so as to build our classes, so as to get the messages that have not been conveyed by the people in a crystal clear manner. Nonverbal, everything that has not been said and yet communicated is nonverbal. Everything that people are not saying very clearly. Of course, our body language matters a lot. Para language is also a part of that. Para language is the para is beyond and language is the language part, right? So paralinguistic skills. Suppose somebody comes to my class late and I don't want to scold the person in the presence of everybody. I say, yeah, please come, welcome. We have been waiting for you only. So that is paralanguage. The language is not that problematic. The words are same, but the thing is the way I am presenting it. Oh, how punctual you are. Paralinguistic skills are the skills that are considered to be beyond language. Artifactual things, artifacts are the things that are communicated a lot of meaning therein. Then there are few other branches as well. I think right now we can skip those branches. I'll straight away come to the no. I cannot skip that. I'll talk a bit about the proximixes as well. Then I'll come to the gestures that we are using. Right. Proximixes is the branch that tells us the way we use distance. That also communicates a lot of meaning in that particular context. Let me give you an example. Since we are not in an interactive mode, I cannot ask questions. I'm narrating it like a story only, but try to build it in your head. And just remind of the situation when you are into a lift situation. When you are into a lift, and suppose you are into a shopping mall, you enter a lift and you need to go to floor number 13, and there are two other people in the lift, and where do you look at in that 1 minute, in that 1.5 minutes, where all is your attention when your lift is going up? Generally, the thing is, people generally look at the floor, or they look at the ceiling, or they look at the floor number. We don't interact with the people who are standing next to us. Proximexis is the theory that tells us that we all carry a personal bubble around us, and the entry into that bubble is not permissible to the people. And it tells us the level, the way we are, I mean, the crux of the matter is one-liner to this long story. I could have continued it longer as well had it been a face-to-face session, but I need to understand the limitations of this as well, right? Because the crux of the matter is that the way we are maintaining the there is a reason because of which I'm delving deep into this. I'm coming to the classroom in a minute. Right. The way we maintain distance from each other, that tells the relationship, the in-depth and the comfort level that we have. Now let's come to the classroom and let us see what all are the things that we see into our classes. Non-verbal body language, if you really want to explore, I think this is the right opportunity when you are locked down in your houses. Observe the behavior of the little ones in the family. I think that's the best key, because there it comes up in a very clear-cut, unsophisticated, unpolished way. Look at that. You will get innumerous inputs. I'm giving you quick keys. I mean, the passion and energy that I have for the area is clearly visible in my voice. That is the paralinguistic thing. I'm not able to resist it. So I'm giving you quick ideas, 3 keys with the help of which we can build the meaning in the language that is communicated through arms and palms. We generally say, I mean, to understand the body language, we need to see the behavior or the behavior of the primitive man. We can relate it with that. So if we quickly relate this with the behavior of primitive man, open palm. Primitive men, Adi Manav, जो गुफा में जाने से पहले, they used to show their palms. It's a non-threatening gesture, right? We generally depict it in any possible way. It's like I'm not carrying any weapon. I'm a friend of yours, and we are well related to each other. And opposite to that is closed palm in any possible way, and pointed finger. Of course, you generally tell it to the people that this should not be there, and it's a gesture of irritation. Now let's put it into our classes and let us see what all one of the age-old theory says that if you're this is taken as the folded arm gesture, right? This is taken as the this is taken as the folded arm gesture, wherein people we generally say that in the interviews and all, you should not sit like this because this is a defensive gesture and you are not open up to the idea and n number of things.
Madam,
Let me quickly talk about the root, understand what does it convey disturbance. Okay.
हाँ मैम, प्लीज एक लास्ट सेंटेंस रिपीट कर दीजिए, थोड़ा सा आवाज ब्रेक हुआ था यहाँ पे आपका, तो प्लीज रिपीट द लास्ट सेंटेंस.
I'm quickly talking about the root of this particular gesture. So if we understand the roots, we can build our own vocabulary also. Yeah, this is written here that binding the arm is a defensive. How has it evolved over a period of time? How do people do it? When your friends come to your family, you ask the little one in the family to recite a poem. आप बोलते हैं बेटा चलो गाना सुनाओ या चलो poem सुनाओ या चलो कुछ सुनाओ. The little one in the family is very reluctant to come forward. नहीं सुनाना उसको because he feels not very comfortable in the company of your friends, right? But as soon as your friends go back, you give him a good thrashing. अच्छी कहानी इसको डोज मिलती है. क्या तुम बिहेव करते हो? मैंने बोला तुमको कविता सुनाने को, तुमने नहीं सुनाया. Next time when you ask the little one to recite a poem, this one knows कि आज नहीं सुनाई तो बाद में क्लास लगेगी, फालतू में सुना. So how they go behind their mother's back, they peep up and then they say something. They peep up, then they say something. They don't feel very comfortable. So the message that the person is trying to convey is तुम्हारा दोस्त है, तुम सुनाओ. But since you are elder, he cannot say that. But the person is not feeling very comfortable. Now as a teenager, आप उसको फिर से अच्छी डोज देते हैं. As a teenager, अगर आप देखें तो बच्चे जब थोड़े बड़े हो जाते हैं, they go behind the back of the sofa. When they realize that standing at the back of their mothers is not a comfortable thing, they go behind the sofa. Because sofa is giving them the similar kind of comfort that was given by the mother's front, right? So as an adult, आप उसको फिर से डांटते हैं कि ये क्या तरीका, सोफे के पीछे जाके खड़े हो जाते हैं, and so many things are. The thing is that this makes you feel comfortable. Defensiveness है क्योंकि आपको उसको आप दूसरे की presence में उतना comfortable नहीं feel कर रहे हो. Now the point is, as an adult, when I don't have my mother to cover, when I don't have a sofa to cover, I cover myself with the hand closure, right? I cover myself like this. Now, context is definitely important. If the AC is at 16 or 18, you tend to sit like this as well. Of course, context plays a major role in that. But the thing is that the point to be remembered is when in my presence, they feel very defensive. And when they feel defensive, I think I need to change my delivery mode. I need to think about how to bring into that particular situation wherein they feel they can share their ideas with me, right? So another thing is the tilted head thing. Another thing is the tilted head. Slight tilt in the head also depicts the interest that has been developed over a period of time. Another gesture that I would like to talk about is this gesture, which is known as the steeple gesture. This is known as the gesture of bosses. I mean, the gesture of doctors, the gesture of lawyers, the gesture of bosses, whosoever is in a superior power. So when you are narrating a long story to a doctor or narrating a long story to a lawyer, people sit like this, and then they say, "Yeah, carry on. I'm listening to you." Steepling gesture. By the way, steeple is the only gesture that has its meaning even in isolation. Steeple, I repeat, steeple is the only gesture that has its meaning even in isolation. It doesn't require any context. If the people are sitting in a steepling gesture, this is the gesture of know it all kind of attitude. Steeple is know it all kind of attitude. So when people are in the hand closure thing, they are not very comfortable, they are defensive, the ideas are not going across. If 2, 3, 4 people in my class are sitting like this, that might be the comfort gesture. That's perfectly all right. I keep ignoring them. But when the majority goes in that particular way, that means I need to change my pitch. I need to understand how to pitch it in a way whereby my idea becomes clear to the people. And when this particular gesture is there, steeple is there, that means whatever you are saying is already known to me. You need to take your discussion to the other side. By the way, I am not able to see whether many of you are sitting in the steeple gesture or what, might be the case. But whenever you see steeple from the other people's side, that means you need to take it to the next level of your discussion. One or two more gestures I'll talk about. Another one is the mouth coverage. Mouth coverage is this gesture. Mouth coverage is this gesture. Mouth coverage is this gesture, right? Again, I'll talk about this with the help of the roots because these gestures keep emerging in our classes. It's not only about the theory that I'm talking about, it's the experience and the observation that I am bound to conduct in my classes as well. Right, so the thing is, how to connect this? Okay, the thing is that when we see, you see the little one when they are, okay. Yeah, PPT I actually didn't prepare. I have some scribble notes and I can share the sources and all. I'm jumping from one area to the another one. And for example, I think I'm the live model and actually I didn't take the PPT thing because I thought that we are not in the classroom. Okay, so moving forward, I'm continuing with this particular steeple is for conducting the know-it-all kind of attitude. Steeple is for know-it-all kind of attitude. So we need to understand is not in the okay. Why my message is not going? Okay. 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 So this I don't know whether my message is going or not. It's not going that side. Okay, continuing with the thing, I repeat, if my voice was broken in between or whatever that is, the thing is, steeple is know it all kind of. My message is not going across. I think I'm blocked that way that I cannot write the messages. And the point is, I repeat that steeple is know it all kind of attitude. So if we see that in the class, we need to take it to the next level. Right. Last thing that I'm going to talk about was the mouth coverage. It's important to understand the mouth coverage from the speaker side and from the listener side as well. It's applicable in the other context also. The thing is, for example, if I say, if I'm as a speaker, if I speak like this, let me take you back to the children's behavior. So, Johnny, yes, Papa, eating sugar, no, Papa. As soon as children tell a lie, they tend to cover their mouth, right? And they are caught like that only. That's how they are caught. on the command of my brain, after telling a lie, my hand also starts to cover my mouth like this only. But since childhood, I have been caught some 20 times. I know, Swatantra, this time if you are going to do this, you will be caught. So instead of covering my mouth like this, I cover it like this. I cover it like this. I do like this. These are known as 3 deceptive gestures of Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, the deceptive gesture that are learned through the 3 monkeys of Mahatma Gandhi. Bura mat dekho, bura mat suno, or bura mat bolo. Right. So the thing is, as a speaker, if I cover my... Okay, fine. The thing is, as a speaker, if I cover up my mouth, that means I'm not coming up very openly with my ideas. For example, I can give you the example, the most quoted example for this particular phenomena are Bill Clinton in Monica Lewinsky case, back home, Lal Krishna Advani in Godhra case in Parliament, our own A. Raja. All these people, I mean, when the pressure is actually high, yeah, I'll conclude it. When the pressure is actually high, we tend to cover our mouth in any particular way, and it's clearly like this. But when the pressure is low, we may end up concluding, we may end up speaking like this. But the point to be remembered is this, that the thing is, when as a speaker, when I cover my mouth like this, that is, I'm not coming up with the fact. But when listeners are in that particular gesture, this is considered that they are actually not believing you. So coming back to putting this particular theory into the classroom context, when I am conducting a session and my students are sitting like this, my students are covering their mouth, or they are touching their nose like this, they are not believing me. When I get to know all these things, what am I supposed to do? What should I do? The thing is, I should give them reassurance, or I should give some backup data, or I need to give some backup data. I need to quote some of the information in the light of which that things can be backed up, right? So that these are the common non-verbal gestures in the light of which we can strengthen up our particular things. Last 2 minutes I would like to take. I'm skipping all the other classroom gestures that I had my plan to cover up. But nonetheless, I would just like to talk about more power that people may get. That is through the longer and expectant look that people may give. Students generally do not answer, but that is the power of your eye glance. If you look at them for a little longer time period, they are bound to answer that. They get a message that is considered to be the expectant look. And the last thing is that strategic walks. I gave a long story around the proxemics is the kind of distance that we maintain. Last point from my side is on the strategic walk. Right. When you go closer to the students, when you take a walk to the student's desk or something, it reduces the gap between you and him. It reduces the gap between you and the class. So if you remain on the stage, that is stage on the stage, you are not the guide by the side. To be the guide by the side, it is considered important to take occasional rounds, especially when you want people to give their inputs, when you want questions to come, and when you want people to be more attentive. When you see any disturbances there, I think occasional rounds help in building the context, in bringing them closer to the thing. With this, I think I would like to wrap up my session. Definitely, I am very passionate about that, and I would like to close it by saying that teaching actually is the profession that teaches the others, all the professions, and more importantly, it influences eternity. So we need to be more passionate, and we need to have interpersonal skills as well while conducting our sessions. That's all from my side. In case you have any questions, observations, inputs, all are very welcome to speak or to put your comments in the chat box as well. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Such a wonderful session and very informative session. And everyone knows why a student or alumni of IIM will hiring in the higher package, because faculty, such a faculty like you and a mentor like you. So definitely it was a very simple and very effective way of teaching. Definitely we
Thank
do
you.
agree communication is unavoidable and process of continuous learning. No doubt at all, we have to choose on you oriented, I oriented, or we oriented. Definitely it's a good example. So many things are there. There is so many things on body language and gesture as well. And so many times people speak about the students' weakness only, but they are not putting their efforts on by their own honesty. So it's definitely so many things to learn. Now I just over to my respected GP Misra sir for the concluding session. Sir, please.
Yeah, I would like to repeat what Professor Gurjar has just said, that this was a big bouquet for the time duration which is given. It was a big bouquet, and each of us is free to feel privileged by picking up a part of their own choice. So I think that's why I am in such a small time, so much has been delivered, and we feel we are exploring what all we can use, and there's still a lot more which is available to us. बहुत बढ़िया सेशन है, बहुत सारी चीजें इतने छोटे समय में आपने बताई, एंड आई थिंक बहुत सारे लोगों को इसमें से कुछ ना कुछ जरूर मिला होगा उनके काम का, and this should help everyone. We are from the same fraternity. I really don't know if because at that time my connection was broken. आपका introduction properly हुआ कि नहीं? Dr. Swatantra has been for last 7 years. She has been into IIM, and she has a total of 17 years of experience as a teacher, and she has 3 books to her credit, 2 as an author and 1 as a sub-editor, in addition to lot of social, demographic, and academic papers. So that's a brief profile, and you have listened to her. That is she's a faculty of communication. Thank you so much, Dr. Swatantra, for visiting us and giving your precious time. And it was a fantastic session. I think Dr. Prateek would like to add something.
नहीं सर, बस बहुत ही अच्छा सेशन रहा. It was very valuable, and definitely this session will be helpful for the faculty members for taking interactive classes with using their body language and good gestures, and also understanding the gestures of the students. So it will be really helpful for them. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, ma'am, from entire Sage University or behalf of all the participants. Thank you so much. Such a wonderful experience with you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot to all of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Bye. We are calling log of the meeting. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. Tomorrow we are having a last or concluding the FDB event. Tomorrow our speaker will be Dr. Sanjay Flores from ISB Hyderabad. He has experience from Cognizant and SCL. He was there in R&D department. So definitely you will learn so many things, how you can work with the latest technology in this lockdown period or something else. So definitely we'll join by tomorrow sharp 2 p.m. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay home. Just take care of yourself. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.